If something is weighing on you, it's heavy, it's hard to carry, and therefore it's hard to move forward and make any progress. Good morning, mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, mothers, misters, and to all my cousins out there around the world, it's time to plug in. Let's get the news train chugging. Trump lashes out wildly as he seeks an election comeback. Looks like he's saying, pull my finger. He's just pointing at somebody and vehemently criticizing them, because that's what lashing out is. It's to strike or hit in many different directions. Technically, to lash is what you do with a whip. However, in this case, it's probably just angrily shouting at people, criticizing and belittling them. That's what it means to lash out at somebody. It's often done abruptly and without any sort of warning whatsoever. And he's doing it wildly, here and there and everywhere, as he seeks an election comeback. He's coming back from behind because technically he's trailing in the polls. A comeback, a come from behind victory to secure another term as the President of the United States. Let's learn more here in the caption. The President is struggling to find a compelling rationale for his re-election, firing off wild scattershot attacks and against an expanding list of perceived enemies. Oh, there's a lot to unpack there, but if something is compelling, it means that it's really kind of making you do it. You can't resist, you can't hold yourself back. You just feel compelled to do it. I just have to do it. But he's trying to find a compelling rationale for his re-election. Some rationale, some reason for people to vote for him. So he's struggling to create a narrative that is a compelling rationale for voters to vote for him and re-elect him. He's firing off wild scattershot attacks, right? Just like it said, wildly lashing out above. He's firing them off. Because when we shoot a gun, we also say to fire a gun. And so he's firing off these wild scattershot attacks, shooting in every direction, or with scattershot. That's when you think about different types of guns or firearms. We have pistols, we have rifles for long distance accurate shooting, and then shotguns, which have usually a larger caliber or diameter to the barrel of the gun, and there's different things you can shoot out of those different types of bullets. One of which being a slug, one large bullet, often used for hunting large animals, or then scattershot, which is a large quantity of smaller pellets within the cartridge, and it's better for hunting birds because as it goes out of the gun, it spreads like that and scatters around a larger area, so making it easier to hit smaller, fast-moving targets like birds. However, to take the shotgun strategy or scattershot effect, it just means you spray in a general direction hoping that you hit something. Basically, it seems like there's no calculated aims. It's just kind of shooting, firing wildly in a general direction in hopes that you hit a target. He's expanding his ever-growing list of perceived enemies. People that he perceives to be enemies, whether or not they are his enemies. If they're not giving him their adulations and praising him and bowing before him, kissing his ring, then he sees them or perceives them or considers them as an enemy. Let's move on. We've had it on the show a couple times. Yesterday we had one senator running away from Trump. We've had several other senators trying to distance themselves from Trump so that they're not associated with him. They're trying to put some distance between themselves and him, saying, oh, I'm not really into what he has to say. That's not my thing. That's his thing. Even though most of them have been just overtly, if not covertly, undercover supporting him for the past 4 years. Yes, like rats from a sinking ship. Moving on. Trump's war chest has dwindled as the election draws near. If something is near, that means it's close. If it's drawing near, and we're not making pretty pictures, it means to pull. And so as it's pulling closer and closer and closer to us, as we're getting closer and drawing nearer and nearer to the election, his war chest, it's just a phrase that we use to describe campaign funds to buy advertising and so on. So his war chest of money has dwindled. Ooh, that's such a nice word. If something is dwindling, it's slowly but surely, gradually decreasing in quantity, in potency, in power, etc. Much like if you don't continue to practice speaking foreign languages, your vocabulary will dwindle over time. Your levels of fluency will dwindle over time. Yes, it's shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's a problem because he needs a lot of publicity to try and promote him. However, he's running out of things to actually promote. Analyses that I've read said actually the best thing he could do is just shut up, hurting himself, shooting himself in the foot every time he opens his mouth or activates his thumbs. Moving on, he abruptly, that means very quickly and unexpectedly, ended an interview. Screw this, I'm out of here. Because as we've seen with countless press conferences and other interviews, if the people are not praising him, he doesn't like it, and so he just disappears and says, you know what, I don't like this, I'm out of here, because we all know he doesn't have actual answers to questions, and so therefore he doesn't like when people actually ask them. Let's move on. Here's just a nice, we got a couple good B words, we got one here and one here coming up. 3 possible explanations for Trump's bonkers campaign strategy. If something is bonkers, it is crazy or silly. We don't see this in the news very often, and being an opinion piece, it's an editorial, probably not part of their actual staff. But so if something is bonkers, it's crazy, it's a bit wild, it's silly, and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah. Oh boy, driving me bonkers the last couple of years. And on to Hong Kong and their flagship airline, Cathay Pacific, is to cut thousands of jobs, I believe I read, as COVID-19 continues to weigh on travel and to weigh it down. If something is weighing on you, it's heavy, it's hard to carry, and therefore it's hard to move forward and make any progress. And so, yes, this COVID catastrophe is weighing on travel, and therefore they're not generating enough money, and they're having to cut thousands of jobs, lay people off, furlough them, let them go, say sayonara, or whatever term you want to use for reducing their headcount. Firing people. Moving on to some sad news in the UK. Their single-day death toll has tripled. That's 3 times more. So if the death toll had been 100, now it's 300. And that's scary. I don't know if that's because the medical system is overburdened. However, obviously, the increase of COVID transmissions and cases is weighing heavily on the National Healthcare Service. Double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, etc. Moving on. On to the next B. Whereas bonkers was an adjective, we got an excellent noun here. Australia's COVID-19 test Blunder has prompted calls for hundreds to take an HIV test. Ew. A blunder is a silly and ridiculous, careless mistake where you really screw something up and you should have known better. How many times have you heard your parents say that? You know, you really should have known better. It turns out that they were reusing needles on multiple people, and that's not a good thing because it increases the risk for blood-borne pathogens and blood-transmitted diseases such as HIV and hepatitis A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Moving on. He, who? Some guy. He, the person who oversaw the Bin Laden raid, the raid on the compound in Pakistan which led to the death of Osama bin Laden. This is the man who managed it, who supervised it, who coordinated it, and then kind of watched to make sure everything went according to plan. I don't know what he says. I have a good guess. Most military leaders have come out calling for, condemning most of Trump's actions, especially because he's alienating allies and isolating us on the global stage, we could say. Alright, moving on. A NASA mission is set to collect a sample from a near-Earth asteroid. However, they have landed on this asteroid and they are set, or the probe, the thing, is set, and set in this case meaning ready, to collect a sample and see what this big rock is actually made of. Alright, moving on. Bletchley Park Codebreakers, their contribution. Notice, yes, we've got the apostrophe after the S, meaning there were many of them, several of them, and their contribution to World War I is or has been overstated, a new book claims. As you know, The Imitation Game, about the life of Alan Turing, was about the situation and the creation of the first, basically, computer. However, they're saying it's overstated. Prefix over meaning too much or too many. And so if something is overstated, it's been overhyped and it is not actually as big as what people said, or it wasn't as significant as what they said it was. So the new book says. Let's move on. On to some random news. A friendly dolphin has vanished after 37 years. To vanish is just another word for to disappear. And however, with vanish though, it's often disappear in an unexplainable fashion or an unexplainable manner. And so, how did the dolphin vanish? We don't know. Maybe he just decided to move. Maybe passed away, maybe was eaten, maybe was unfortunately scooped up in a tuna net. We don't know what happened to Flipper's unnamed cousin. Let's move on. I used the word obscene up above, and we've got obscene here again. Fans are to donate to food banks rather than, or instead of, paying an obscene $19 to watch TV soccer games, or soccer games on TV, or football matches on the telly. $19 seems like quite a bit, actually a pretty hefty sum, a serious chunk of change just to watch football matches on television. Obscene, often we know this for obscene language, obscene visual material, in that case meaning related to sex, graphically sexual in nature. However, obscene also means a number, an amount, or a quantity which is seen as too high, we could say. Footballers are paid an obscene amount of money. I guess they were estimating that viewers cared a little bit more than that, but especially now in times of economic hardship, that it's increasingly hard to justify cable packages like that. Let's move on. On to one of my wife's favorite words of recent times, eerie. Eerie photos reveal how COVID curfew is transforming Paris. Now, let's start at the backside here. Curfew. That is a legal decree, often not quite a law, but maybe a temporary mandate that people are not on the street, that they are at home, or at least indoors after a certain period of time. And so in Paris, I believe it's from 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. People are not allowed on the streets, or at least the bars and restaurants have been ordered to stay closed. Interestingly, the word curfew actually comes from Old or Middle English, and it means to cover the light, because in medieval times, people after a certain hour, for whatever reason, were required to cover the fire or the candle, so that way things were dark. Maybe it's so the enemy couldn't see you, much like blackouts during the Blitz in World War II. However, eerie, strange, uncanny, spooky, unsettling. And what they're talking about here is how the streets of Paris are empty, like a ghost town. Just like much of the quarantine times and those early confinement months, I know in Barcelona it was very, very strange. We used to live in the smack dab center next to the Arc de Triomphe, where there was always people, all hours of day and night. But then during that period of time, the streets were empty. Beautiful, gorgeous weather, and there was not a soul out there. It was a little bit disturbing, a little bit unsettling. It was spooky. It was eerie, mysterious. So it's mysterious, but in a disturbing or scary sort of way, often sometimes implying something semi-supernatural, like in the fog, or something vanished. Moving on. Senior, meaning old COVID-19 patients, suffer brain fog. Something is foggy. You can't see clearly, or you don't really understand what's going on. You can't make things out. Your memories of the night before might be a little bit foggy, unclear. You're not sure what happened. Seniors are often confused anyway, but suffering from an increased brain fog in drawn-out recovery. Ooh, drawn out is a hyphenated adjective here based on the phrasal verb to draw something out, means to cause it to take longer than normal or longer than it should. Much like many of my explanations here are a little bit too drawn out. A drawn out recovery means that it's taking a lot longer than it should to get better and clear their head. Alright, thanks, Pira. Sea Voter's hilarious TikTok video on lines to vote. The voting lines. Hilarious just means really, really funny. If you watch it, feel free and fill me in, but I don't do the TikTok because my clock is saying TikTok and I don't have the time to get involved in that. My plate is already full as is, and there are far bigger fish to fry in my day-to-day existence. Hilarious. Really, really funny. Let's move on. You're not nuts. If you are nuts, it means that you're crazy. You've got a few screws loose. And often if somebody's eating some nuts, we say, be careful because you are what you eat. And that means you're crazy. You're not crazy, but this is a crazy time. And so don't worry, it's not you, it's just the situation, hey? It's a crazy time. Here are a dozen ways to cope with the crazy times. Yeah, and so that's to handle something difficult in a successful fashion. And so you're not just dealing with it, but you're coping with it. That means you're dealing with it successfully, or at least with a relative degree of success. We've got deal with, we've got cope with, we've got handle. Yeah, no with. No handle withs. I'm still telling you, I'm going to make a t-shirt eventually. Moving on. Reinventing soccer. Shocking results, goals galore, and no fans. And so they're not playing for the applause, they're playing in empty stadiums. And maybe that's why there's a lot of goals. People aren't playing defense? I don't know. Shocking results, there are upsets. People who are not predicted to win are actually coming out on top and defeating the favorites, or the team which was favored to win, as I said above. But goals galore. If we have something galore, that means a lot of. And as I found out this morning with a quick look, it actually comes from Galore, something I don't know in Irish, which means sufficiently or in a sufficient fashion. And so that means enough or more than enough. But in modern day terms, galore means a lot of. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Those were the headlines for today, Wednesday the 21st of October. So thanks for tuning in to English of the Wise. That was breaking down the news. If you like what we do, please click the like, follow, subscribe on YouTube, bell notification icon. But more than anything, pass us along to a friend. Spread the good word, and let's get some more people in here, helping them to expand their vocabulary and communicate more colorfully. No crossword until Friday because I got evening classes today and tomorrow, but I'll be back with you at 8 a.m. for another installation of the news, or at least to break them down tomorrow morning. And so if I don't see you sooner, I'll see you then. Have a beautiful start to your day, or finish, depending where you are in the world. All right, bye-bye. Yes, stop the stream.